Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about Respighi's Ancient Airs and Dances for Lute. Actually, they're not for lute, they're from lute. And in Italian, it's Antiche Danze ed Aria. In other words, it's exactly the opposite as it is in English. It's dances and airs in Italian, and it's airs and dances in English. Don't ask me why. I'm not in charge of these things. This is a lovely, lovely group of pieces. There are 3 suites that Respighi arranged between 1917 and 1931-ish, and they are absolutely marvelous. They are arrangements of lute pieces, or guitar, theorbo, or arch lute, or one of those contraptions back in the day. And the thing that fascinates me about these pieces, aside from the fact that they're melodically absolutely gorgeous, is that Respighi did his first arrangement, the first suite, each has 4 pieces in it, back in 1917. And, this is an avowedly neoclassical arrangement. And he did it 2 years before Stravinsky made his own neoclassical breakthrough in Pulcinella. And the comparison between the two is fascinating. If you have and love Stravinsky's Pulcinella, then you really should have the Respighi as well, because the aims of the composers were rather different. Of course, Stravinsky was writing a ballet based on music by what he thought was Pergolesi, but turned out to be mostly Domenico Gallo. And Respighi was doing some real musicology, rescuing early music and simply clothing it in modern orchestration, but not changing it the way Stravinsky changed it to make it sound like Stravinsky. The two comparisons are very, very interesting to me also because Stravinsky always gets the credit for being, the neoclassical guy. He had his neoclassical breakthrough, and neoclassicism sort of began with Stravinsky's Pulcinella, but Respighi had done it 2 years previously. And both of them, fascinatingly, were pupils of Rimsky-Korsakov back in Russia. Most people aren't aware of the Rimsky connection when it comes to Respighi, but it was very, very potent because, of course, Respighi was a glorious orchestrator, very much in the Rimsky-Korsakov tradition, probably more so than Stravinsky was. And I just think it's one of those wonderful little moments in time where you can make a comparison and learn something very interesting about the two. So Respighi does not Respigify so much the music, to modernize it in the way that Stravinsky does. He wants to celebrate its archaic sounding harmonies, and but he does do things like he adds a harpsichord to the orchestration of the first 2 suites. The first suite is for somewhat chamber orchestra. The second suite is for a slightly larger orchestra. The third suite, which came last, is only for strings, and that's the one that gets played most frequently because it's only for strings, and so it shows up on string orchestra discs all the time. And I really think that if you're going to get them, you might as well get all 3 suites. So I'm only going to talk about a small group of recordings that contains the complete set, and sometimes some other works as well. One of the things that I particularly enjoy about the work is just how suitable it is for music for other occasions. I used the opening dance. What's it called here? Does it have a name? Yes, the Balletto Detto Il Conte d'Orlando. Yes, the Count Roland, actually. I used this balletto for a friend of mine's wedding. It makes the perfect wedding processional. Really amazingly ideal music for a wedding processional because it begins as if from the distance and then becomes very fulfilling, and it lasts 3 minutes, which takes exactly as much time as you usually want unless you're doing like a royal wedding, in which case you need a week and a half of music. But for normal people, it's absolutely ideal to get everybody up to the altar or wherever you're going to do the actual ceremony. And people enjoy it because it's extremely titillating to the ear. And if you're looking for some music that you want to use for a wedding and you're not going to hire an ensemble to perform at the actual at the actual ceremony in whatever venue you happen to be in. This piece is as great a piece of wedding music as I think you will ever hear. Here it is. I'm going to play you the whole thing, all 3 minutes of it, because I just think it's marvelous. It works for other things too. It's a perfect little processional for all of your extracurricular activities. Here you go. That was the balletto detto or something. Yes, the balletto detta or balletta. Pardon me, balletta. I don't know. One of those things. The Count of Orlando, Il Conte d'Orlando, from the first suite of Respighi's Ancient Airs and Dances, performed by the National Symphony Orchestra of Ireland under Enrico Saccani on Naxos. Just delightful, absolutely delightful music. And I really think that this is just one of those pieces you should have in your collection. It's so enjoyable just to take out and relax to. That's really what the music is. My favorite number actually is the conclusion of the second suite, the Bergamasca, which is it's a big number. It lasts about, let's see here, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, 4 minutes and a bit. 4 minutes and a bit. It's for the largest orchestra, but my goodness, it's hard to believe that this came from the lute music. I just will play you a minute of it, just so you can hear how charming it is. Here you go. Just great stuff. I mean, really, when you think about it, you can tell that it's lute music in the sense that it's mostly arpeggios. It just goes up and down the instrument, but wide-ranging arpeggios. And it's hard to believe that that was actually written for some sort of mega lute, sort of huge, 27-string contraption that has an enormous range. But anyway, this is the Naxos recording, and I'm going to tell you about 4 more. I only have 5 of the complete set here because there really are no bad performances if you can get the complete set. The music kind of plays itself. It's not challenging in terms of interpretation. You just keep it moving and play it beautifully and with charm, and you're in business. That's all you need. So here are 5 very nice recordings of the complete set. One is this Naxos one, which only has the ancient airs and dances and nothing else. All of the others here, I believe, have couplings. Yes, I think they're and one of them, let me see. Does the other one? No, there's one that just doesn't. Okay, here we are. Let's go for it. We have this version on CPO with the Munich Philharmonic, the Munich Radio Symphony, the Munich Radio Symphony under Harry Rodalis. Beautiful performance that also comes with The Birds, another neoclassical reworking by Respighi, only one with a little bit more, shall we say, he did more things to the music that he was arranging when he arranged it, but it's really, really attractive. And then this is an absolutely gorgeous disc on Telarc with Jesus Lopez Cobos and the Lausanne Chamber Orchestra. You get all 3 suites and the Botticelli pictures. I love the Botticelli pictures. I just think they are the most beautiful pieces. And the second movement of the Botticelli pictures quotes the wonderful Veni Veni Emmanuel, which is just such a beautiful, beautiful Christmas hymn, which I sang when I was in high school glee club in Zoltan Kodai's arrangement for 3-part choir. Just a wonderful tune. When you hear it, you'll probably recognize it. But the Botticelli pictures are so beautiful. They almost, for me, kind of overwhelm the ancient airs and dances. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. But these are beautiful, elegant performances by Jesus Lopez Cobos, who is such a fantastic conductor of this kind of music, an artist of real elegance and poise. And you get Telarc sonics. I mean, what could be bad, right? But there are 2 recordings of the complete suite that you really need to know about, that are really important in its history. The first is this one, Antal Dorati. This is with the London Symphony with the Philharmonia Hungarica. And you also get on this disc you get the Birds, the complete Birds, and one movement, the Song and Dance from the Brazilian Impressions. Now, these were licensed from Mercury. These were Mercury Living Presence recordings originally, and these were famous. These were the ones that taught us this music, or at least most of us, because they were recorded in the late 50s, and the sonics were just vivid and impactful and fabulous. And, Respighi's music was not well known in the 50s. Anything besides like the Pines of Rome, the big ball buster, orchestral showpiece stuff. Those were the works that we knew, mostly from Toscanini's performances of the Roman tone poems. But there was so much more. And the only guy back then who was doing that stuff was Antal Dorati. And he gave us the Birds and the Brazilian Impressions, and it was such a revelation for people who wanted to hear more Respighi, and particularly to hear, his range in music aside from the Roman tone poems, because he really wasn't a significant musicologist in his day and an exploiter of earlier music. And these arrangements were absolutely fantastic for some of us wanting to build our collections. You had to get the Dorati Respighi recordings. So they've been licensed to Alto, and at a very decent price. You can get these then if you don't have the Mercury Living Presence originals, which are very hard to find now outside of like the mega boxes of Mercury stuff. So Dorati is absolutely essential, and also a new standard, quite frankly. And one of my favorite recordings is this one with Ozawa and the Boston Symphony, which I have to turn right side up. These performances are so beautifully done. This disc only contains the complete ancient airs and dances. But, you know, frankly, until this disc came out, the music had never been played so beautifully. It's simply the most beautiful performances of the music that you can get. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the music seems to just glow from within from these performances. I don't know what it was about the music that attracted Ozawa's notice, but he and the Boston Symphony just did a fantastic job. And this is a classic recording. And I think, you know, when you may think it's not fair or it's silly or whatever, but the truth of the matter is, when a major orchestra and conductor take up this kind of music, it gives it a certain validation that it hadn't had previously. You know, it raises the bar a bit, and it shows us just how susceptible the music is to the highest standards of performance and how well it sounds when you do that. I think that's really kind of an important thing with a lot of music. You know, people sort of poo-poo Respighi and went, well, you know, he writes this sort of, you know, trashy, tuneful, melodic, gorgeously orchestrated schlock. And he didn't. He didn't. Well, he wrote some, I suppose. But pieces like this are incredibly worthy of the highest levels of attention and care and technique that you can lavish on them, and they benefit from that because he was a very serious composer in what he was doing, and he arranged these dances con amore. They are beautifully wrought, and you really hear that in this recording with Ozawa and the Boston Symphony on DG. So that's something definitely worth hearing. But any of these will suit you. They really will, because the music is just indestructible. The tunes are great. And when you have great tunes, you're basically home free for 90% of what you want to do, unless you're a complete klutz, you know, and everything else you're doing. And Respighi was anything but a klutz. But before we go, I have to tell you about one recording that is not by Respighi at all, but it is this disc on Hyperion that you got to get. If you love the ancient airs and dances as I do, this was just a blast. This is Paul Odette and Rogers Covey Crump, remember him, doing the actual music that Respighi borrowed for the ancient airs and dances for all four of his suites. And it's arranged, if you look at the back here, in all four suites, suite number 1, 2, and 3. So it's done in the Respighi order, and he used multiple pieces in some of his individual movements, and here they all are. And Paul Odette plays all kinds of instruments. I mean, he plays the lute, and he plays an arched thing, and he plays a theorbo, and, you know, because they require different instruments. They come from a century or two of music, of early Italian music, and this is so much fun. Because once you know the ancient airs and dances, to hear the originals only gives you a wonderful disc of early music, first of all, for the instrument, but it also just makes you even more aware of the mastery that Respighi exercised in making these absolutely wonderful arrangements. So do consider grabbing this thing on Hyperion if you can still find it. It's absolutely fantastic. So that's the ancient airs and dances, folks. I know that there are lots more recordings out there. There are lots more recordings of bits of them and a few more recordings of the complete work. Neville Mariner did a good one. Nobody does it badly. You don't have to worry about that. Just get them, sit back, and enjoy. Keep on listening, folks. Thank you for joining me. Take care.